Welcome to Accountants Law Pod, where accounting professionals and law firms converge. Hosted by Linda Artisani, Sarah Prevost, and Stephen Libhart.
Welcome back, everyone. How are you, Linda and Steve?
We're good. Right, Steve?
Yeah, we're doing great. It's summertime.
You get your sexy voice going on.
I have my sexy voice. I'll do my radio announcer voice today. How are you?
You do. Yeah, you really got it going on today. Well, we're kicking off onboarding new attorney clients. You can really kick it off, Steve, with that voice.
I could do the recording. Just send this and send that, and you'll get 10 teeny tiny clothespins as a bonus. And wait, there's more.
Just follow the yellow brick road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you do when you get a new client and you're onboarding them? They've signed. Everything went well. They've signed. Now what?
Anyone?
Oh, I thought she was asking you. She knows what happens with us. She better.
Boy, we've got it together this morning, I'll tell you.
We're having fun. It's summer.
I like to have a checklist of items for them and set up a Zoom meeting and let them know what we need and go through it. And we use Financial Sense. I like to take, I set up their portal in advance. We have that all ready to go. We'll set up some dummy transactions in there and we'll show them how it works and the notifications they get and all those sorts of things to kind of get their buy-in into the process that we're going to take them through. And then we have a whole checklist of things like the bank access for read-only access for pulling statements and looking at transactions and credit cards and all the different things that we need to do the job and kind of setting up the flavor for like the next 30 and 60 days, what that onboarding is going to look like and how we're going to, I always like to warn them that we're going to get started and you're probably going to see us disappear for a little bit. And then we're going to circle back around and really start the ball rolling with all our questions and all those things. But I don't know about you guys, but that's how we like to do it because we like to poke around in their billing software. We like to have everything in place before we start. So we're not chasing them for the documents that we need and kind of building the flavor of our relationship.
We call it the going dark
high level look. What's that?
We call it the going dark period. But usually it's only in a cleanup. So we don't go dark. Basically, it's in the cleanup phase, but we still meet with them every week as the cleanup's going on. Initially, we do a lot of what you just said. We get on the bank account, so we don't have to be asking them for bank statements unless it's inside of QuickBooks. But then even then, we sometimes want it. And all the other details, like you just mentioned, a lot of that stuff, like the tax return already came through in the scope part of the job, so we don't have to ask for that. But we might be tying the books to tax as part of the job. We'll start at the beginning usually. If there's a cleanup and it involves trust, we will do that. But if we've got ongoing, we start that as well. So we kind of work the two teams at the same time. So we were cleaning up on one side and then somebody's keeping it going forward. So we're not falling behind.
That's smart.
We don't typically start a job as soon as somebody's signed the contract. They know that it's going to be a little bit of time because we have to get everything set up. You're just talking Financial Sense. We're setting ourselves up in Carbon now, and it's a process to get all that set up. Typically, what happens first is Tara puts it in the channel, so everybody can know the new client. She gets the website, and that way they have an idea of who we're working with. She puts like a little celebratory post.
I like that.
For all the team, so everybody knows about it. And then we kind of chuckle that somebody's always in. I said, "How do you think they're reacting to it?" And I said, "They're probably going, oh God, I wonder if I'm getting that client. Am I getting more work?
Know. New challenge.
Yeah. Who's getting it is really probably what they're thinking. I wonder who's going to get that one." But
yeah.
Well,
and I feel like sometimes we've had to also, and I've seen other people actually do this in their firms, but we've had to go to this once in a while. It's not as easy to get all those bank logins set up. It might be a volume of them. So sometimes just doing a meeting and pulling that in. Yeah.
Because some of them you get 24 hours. If you don't go and do it in the 24 hours, you're not going to get it. And it comes in like a different time zone than mine. I'm coming in and it's too late. I don't get to it. So it's better sometimes just to have that initial kickoff meeting, and then just get all the pieces together, because that's when they're really involved and they're really excited. And
right.
Then it's busy, you lose that, excitement.
Yeah.
I think. And sometimes we have a Slack channel, depending on the client, we'll have a Slack channel set up. So we might want to do that at the same time, if that's the type of client that requires that,
Or the types of communication styles that, like you're saying, Linda, sometimes it is Slack. Sometimes we have to develop one where, because of the cadence of work. So depending on the type of firm and the volume of work, we may need to set up additional, like say a Google form or a spreadsheet in order to communicate for the day to day, so that that week can be handled properly during the week, because we're in their files so frequently. But yeah, Steve, I believe that we have a very similar setup. The thing that I have found, though, is learning the way to work with a firm. Sometimes it's the owner you work with, and other times it's someone that's assigned to you, or it could be multiple people assigned to you, and figuring out that style of communication, because not everyone's in at the same time, communicating the same style. It can be
Who wants to be copied on the emails? Who doesn't? Who, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the beauty of our new software too, that we're going to be able to have communications on email specifically. If a client sends us something and then we have to bring in other people, we can actually have inside communication on the message
Oh,
itself.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really
the other
cool.
thing too is, do you all find that when we're looking at the tech stack, obviously, like you said, Linda, we're doing cleanup. We're not trying to change a lot of things.
No.
Sometimes we're hired for a portion of the migration or cleaning up of the migration, but then we end up seeing a whole tech stack that you have to ask, like, what is this all used for? What's the purpose?
What do you do with it? Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes they don't tell you that they have something. You find out later that they're using something on the side. That, I didn't mention I used FileFind. No, you never mentioned that. Parts of their workflow they don't tell us that we kind of need to know about. That's another thing that can happen.
Yeah, that's partly goes to that inquiry thing. But, even the best of us can, if you're not asking the right questions or following up with the right questions, it is hard to know what those things are. Also, what we have found of late is these migrations are happening mid-year, not at the beginning of the year.
Mid-year, midweek, middle of everything. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why did you pick?
Yeah.
What do you find? Why are they? What's their answer? Why are they doing that now?
That's when Clio could do it. So they picked March 22nd. I'm like, what caused that date? Oh, I don't know. So it's a half a month in the 8 days in the current month. Like there's that line in the sand. It's such a, like, you were March 22nd. You should have said, oh no, we're going to do it on to April 1st. So you have a clear cutoff date and you can finish a month. And it's crazy that that's how it's happening. But it is. So, and that makes it a lot more difficult because a lot of times they'll do a migration without even talking to us. And I can remember this happening with Lien Law even way back, where somebody did the migration and they did it through Lien Law, they did an import and nobody went back to check. Did it all come through? Like, what's your, and we'll say, what is your original import? And usually Lien Law is very good because it's usually Fred and they get everything. He makes sure that everything matches. But on some of the software, there's nobody there to validate the numbers. So it might have had one amount coming on the bottom of the spreadsheet of the import, and then a different amount came in because some line items weren't picked up for whatever reason, and you're missing data. And that's a problem with trust. And it's a problem with client costs too. You don't want to miss any client costs. So
how do you know the data is good to begin with too?
Exactly.
And that's usually what happens too. So you get it out of some other software that's just garbage that came across. So it's not being read properly. And maybe you have a couple of names that are the same almost, maybe a comma and a space. And so it sees it as one name, even though in the other software, maybe it was one name and now it's seeing it as three different names. It can be messy. Or you can get duplications. It's pretty ugly. So you want to be able to check into that. Also, if you're doing a cleanup, it's a lot different because you're going to have a lot more to do, especially when it comes to trust. How far back are you going? Is it in a closed fiscal period that you're going back and cleaning up trust? Are you doing it in a spreadsheet to tie it all back because you don't want to disturb what's there? Or are you actually doing it in the accounting, but you can't change transactions from the past? So in a closed period, so you have that to deal with. That's another part. Or maybe it's just somebody that came to us with Clio, but they never connected it. And now we're having to be that person to connect it. because we want to integrate the software. And then that's a whole process that you want to have done by a professional. You don't want to tackle that job by yourself. You really don't. I don't care how easy it says it is. It's not, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in doing
you have
that.
to think about a lot of things about just software in general. We also kind of look through that lens of like your payroll provider, how have you been booking that? I guess one thing is, Linda and Steve, is one thing we have found is at times is how credit cards are handled. They're not handled as you would think.
That's a slippery slope a lot of the time.
Yeah. So it's put in not as a dedicated bank feed style. It's put in as a bill or even an expense, right, Linda? We've seen it as, and you got to wonder
it's their
why.
personal card that they've linked to the bank for some reason, and
Yeah.
Or they haven't linked it to the bank and they go, oh, you forgot to put these expenses in. Well, where are they? Oh, they're on my personal card. How do I get them out of there and into the books? Well, we have a few ways we can do it. If you want to get them in the books for the fiscal year that's being closed and it's already passed and it's in last year, then we're going to have to put it in like as a loan, and then you're going to pay it in this year. I mean, you have to, if you want to get it in for the right fiscal period. It can get really messy. As I said, you need somebody that knows what they're doing. You can always see when somebody's tried to do it themselves or they had an admin do it that doesn't have the accounting background. It usually shows itself pretty quickly, especially with compliance. I love, we used to have a running joke, Sarah and I, when we would go in a file. We've never, everybody says, well, I think ours is reconciled. And we get in, oh, not reconciled, doesn't match. And then we had one. Like, oh my God. It is balanced and it's balanced properly. And I think it was a bookkeeper, retiring bookkeeper or something that knew what they were doing. But it was like, oh, that ruins our, nobody ever has one reconciled, but we did find one. It was a smaller account, but yeah, I think that's part of it.
Steve, I was going to ask you, we have found this, and I wonder if you have seen this of late. Talk about retiring, bookkeepers retiring, or they don't like the software that the firm is going into.
Yeah.
So they just bow out.
They leave.
How have you encountered that, or have you seen that on the rise a bit?
I haven't seen it on the rise. We did stumble across one this year that had been with an attorney for a long, long time, and was actually doing everything in Excel.
In Excel?
So, fortunately,
really?
Fortunately, we were able to convince the attorney to let her finish 2024. And we'll start fresh with QuickBooks in 2025. So thank goodness. But it's a good time during the onboarding in some of these situations to bring up practice areas again. What are your practice areas?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you work within those practice areas, and what do you want that to look like on the books? Because that's a great time to hit the ground running in the right direction right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine you're going to be able to give that attorney so much data, like live data as of whatever, that they never had if it was in Excel.
Right.
And that person was probably making a full-time job out of something that maybe is only a few hours now.
That was my first thought when I saw that. I was like, whoa, we can save so much time there and get so much more data.
Yeah. Yeah. The response back, I think you'll be able to pull anything that they probably never had.
Right.
Because just spreadsheets. Oh my, and also thinking about all the mistakes that could happen with a spreadsheet.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Pick up a number, or, you're grabbing a column, you're adding the column up and you miss a cell or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the onboarding is such a good time to really get personal with the client and find out what makes them tick, and, find out, how big is your family? Do you mentioned you have children. How old are they? Kind of just get to more personalize the interaction with them. And that always leads off into, you find little tidbits that help you work with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, you learn a little bit of maybe the need or the demand of financials, like how are they paid? What are their needs for their if you're
good point. Yeah. I mean, are the kids, are you saving for college? Are you, what are you doing?
Yeah. The other thing too, is I feel like it's also a good time to sort of look at the way you handle client costs, understanding that workflow.
Right.
Are you moving into a new software? How have you decided to handle that? Familiarity of reporting styles that you might need. Because like you said, Steve, you start to learn where is it that they're most concerned. It's nice when somebody is, okay, I really want to know this, or this has always been in the back of my mind. I don't understand how this works. Then Linda and I can lean into that and say, okay, that helps us because we'll want to make sure your chart of accounts is supporting the thought process of how you get to those numbers, kind of thing.
What do they do to you?
And a lot of times Sarah and I will start the file. Like if we get a new client, we'll kind of go in and start the work so we can understand a workflow and how we want to lay it out. And we'll do it initially, and then it gets passed to the bookkeeper, depending on the client. Not always, but sometimes with certain clients, we have to jump in and kind of look at, especially if it's a big cleanup, understanding like what are we looking at? And we know that from the scope. But sometimes clients don't sign the contract for a while, and you have to go back. We've been putting expiration dates on them now because, I mean, I can't be getting somebody that I looked at in January or December of last year.
Right.
Now they're signing. The price isn't the same if you waited that long. And I mean, it's just try to remember, right?
So so much has gone on since then. Like, what is the work that's been done? Is it
which one was
valuable?
That
again? Yeah. Where were they in their life cycle of changes in their firm? Yeah.
How do you set expectations for communicating? How do you lay that out?
For us, what we have found is in the beginning, what we have is a go dark as we're collecting. You'll hear from us. But then we try to develop, based on a tailored service communication style, check-in points. So we'd like, ideally, if it's once a week, depending on the volume, if it's a larger firm, once a week, sometimes twice a week has to work because there's so many questions. Other times it's every other week, just 15 minutes on the calendar, just to make sure that we're checking in. We have found success with that. It doesn't always work with every single client, though. That's not to say that what we've decided works for us is going to work for everybody. And that has been true for a few firms because they're smaller, the availability of time, or the partners or the people dedicated, there's transition happening. So it is hard to say like, hey, I want to commit this person or have this time. And then we find this has happened to us too. We found out that we're spending time with one person and that's one tiny piece of the pie where there was like maybe a couple other people or some of the answers needed to come directly from the owner. So that again goes back to that kind of evolving conversation. Check-in points at minimum. We like Linda does a great job for us. She'll send a weekly update or some sort of notice of, hey, it's been a minute since we've last spoken. Here's where we're at.
Oh, I like that.
Just because if we don't, then we hear from clients and what do they say, Sarah? They say, well, I had somebody do this work, but I never heard from them again.
Right.
Never had 1 ounce of communication with them. And we know what that feels like when we're doing work with somebody. We want that. Just even if it's just a message, if they're really busy and they're like, I can't do a meeting every week, but if you just let me know what's going on and we outline it just exactly, this is what happened. This is what we did in the last week. This is what we're working on next. So they have an idea and we're in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or whatever in the project. And then sometimes I'll just take, like if we finished phase 1 or if there was parts of phase 1, but then we had some reason that couldn't make it through, I'll actually take it out of the contract and I cross it out with the, strike through what we had done. And then we leave whatever's open and with some notes to say why. It's really a good way to do it because it also helps us know where we're at in the contract and in the phase. And then it also helps the client because they already know what they signed up for. And then it lets them know where we're at. And then especially when we're letting them know that next week is, so they don't think we're just sitting back, ignoring them, nothing's happening. And sometimes I think that can happen with a client if you don't stay on top of it. And they really do appreciate the updates. I know they do. And
I think attorneys really, really do compared to a lot of other businesses because of the type of work they do and their clients are expecting.
They don't do a good job of it themselves, though, do they?
It depends.
Yeah, it depends on but you kind of open the door, Steve. There are some people that we've worked with through the years that really, this is like, just don't check in with me until you're at this stage.
Yeah. They'll
just tell you straight out. Okay, no problem. If something comes up in between now and then, and it's a little bit of a, not like a red flag kind of conversation, it's a great reminder to say, based on our last email, this is the communication style that we were adhering to.
This is what we're still waiting for from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is why it's getting held up because we're still waiting for this piece. And
this isn't done because I'm still waiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
sometimes the bigger the firm, the more cooks are in the kitchen. And so then that also has to lean into, okay, let's strategize. Let's make sure we kind of like an agenda style of pieces, phases, maybe.
Mhm.
But when you're onboarding, it's such a critical moment for us as well, as you know, Steve. Like we're like if I'm onboarding you, I'm wanting, like you said earlier, I want to understand what's going on. What is it? Is your comfort level? Are you a bank balancer? Meaning, do you always open up your bank account and that's how you validate it in your
Yeah.
mind?
Well,
That's
you
your
know
process.
what? To your point, oh my gosh, I'm glad you brought that up
Okay.
because I run into this frequently. They'll say, well, the bank says we have this much
Oh,
money.
yeah.
How come you, excuse me,
Oh.
how come you say we have this much in QuickBooks? And I like to include that in the onboarding. And I also like to include
Good
where
point.
there's multi-member firms, where, to your point, with all the cooks in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
I tell them it's okay for you guys to talk to each other before you bring the question to us so
Mm-hmm.
that you know you don't have this going on between the two of you, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But that's so true
Oh.
because we get those calls. Another one that we've gotten is when they look at if they're on it's the home page or whatever on QuickBooks and they'll have the widgets and they'll look at the widgets, but the widgets are set to accrual and then you'll send them the financial reports and like, these don't match, something's wrong. And you're like, okay, well, you're looking at accrual based here. And you have to go through the whole explanation of what the difference is in the two. It's like, and I'll tell them sometimes, don't even look at that, what's on QuickBooks. Just trust me that the documents I'm sending you are what
Right.
you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're specifically picked and designed for you.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had that and we've had the panic call with, why is my balance negative, but my balance is positive? Well, you had all these uncleared checks that you haven't addressed that go back 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that
We've
conversation.
also had communication between partners saying two different things.
Yep.
So, I mean,
That's why I brought up that phrase I use. It's okay for you guys to talk to each other before
mm-hmm.
you call.
It's a good point. Yeah. Because, I
And
mean,
if you can set that expectation up front in the onboarding,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
they
Yeah.
know that you're on top of it and that, you know, I have no problem sharing what another partner told me
Mm-hmm.
Right.
when I need to, you know, and that's not always easy, but it's like you've really got to talk to your partner because that's
Yeah.
the level we're at here.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
this partner's telling us to do this partner's telling us to do that. You guys got to talk.
The one that's been interesting for us, and we didn't know this in the onboarding stage, it would have never come up because it's not even a forethought to ask, is how your firm works with responsibility, meaning you have the rainmaker, the operator, the managing,
Oh yeah.
all the different things, right? Well, at one point in our existence of working through kind of the newer side of it together, Linda and I, and figuring things out, we had one where the partners rotated the seat,
Oh,
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, they changed positions. So we worked
wow.
with
Okay.
great.
unbeknownst to us.
And we didn't know. All of a sudden, it was like the year flipped and they switched seats. So now all of a sudden, the go-to person on our file was not the same person that we initially started with.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting approach, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like they drew the short straw or something, I guess.
I felt that I understood the logic to it. I didn't feel that that was appropriate for the person. It's not the strong suit of the individual. So it's like taking an employee and saying, okay, you've done this role. Now I'm going to put you over here. And that person's scared to answer the phone or scared to whatever, doesn't have
Yeah.
attention to detail. And that
Wow.
really, the communication, it's a whole reset. So when things like that occur, you're asking us to basically re-onboard you.
Right.
Truly, because that person's, it's not like they were having meetings in the background, keeping each other abreast of what was happening. They just were like, okay, my term's done, next person in. And they don't know anything. They don't know anything about the past. And then we have to teach them everything that happened. And oh, that happened. This is what we did. This is what, Mary Jo said to do or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's not how I would have handled it. Well,
Yeah.
we have to keep documentation because this was happening. We weren't aware
Yeah,
of
that really becomes crucial.
Yeah, it was very odd. It's an odd way to do it, though. Usually there's somebody in the partnership that's stronger suited to accounting and that takes that role. And
Yeah.
that's the person that's our approver, basically. Usually you get a person in the office that's physically doing the work that we work with. And then there's a person above that person reports to. But that was a really weird situation in that case.
It also was very uncomfortable because it wasn't inclusive. So that's another thing. I think, Steve, you brought this up, and I feel like Linda and I feel very strongly about this. In order for this to be a strong relationship, it has to be a relationship.
Exactly.
So to when you're making big decisions, I get it. It's a firm decision. Including us just on a cursory level would be very helpful, because your decisions do impact our workflow. They do have some financial means attached to them. And so that's also another thing, is we do our best to, like, we're supplying this information. Yes, we're doing this role, but we do wonder about where you're at. What is your ideas? What is your growth? Where do you want to see yourself? If you want to even grow, or is it just about quality of life for you and the team that you currently have?
Good point.
So onboarding is, on the front end, looks like I imagine, like you're walking into a spa, you're filling out your pieces of paper. Here I am, they're reading it over. Okay, let's talk about you. That on the front end looks so simple. But really what happens is the evolution of the conversations and the information, and to find out that you forgot to share that you have 5 other credit cards. That's a big problem. Now, our pricing is not aligned with what we discussed. That's a lot more work. Or you have this whole year-end true-up that you do, which what I love to call true-up, meaning you go through all of your records and figure out what you spent on your personal, and then you hand a big slop of stuff. No, that's this needs to be very concise. You said at the beginning you wanted good financials, and then you send 12 months worth of stuff at the end of the year. That's not good financials. You didn't do a service to your business as well.
Yeah.
So, and then also the other thing too is the value. This is, you're paying for a service, but this isn't just about paying for a service. There's value behind it. And Linda has brought this up repeatedly. A lot of people have what in their minds, especially when they're smaller, they need the CEO, the CFO, the coach, this, that. And you have no means to afford it. And if we just had a candid conversation together, there are parts of the advisory services that we could offer you, and then say, hey, look, we do want to bring in a partner that could lead you. We've done this before. We know what this looks like. We have the 50-foot view. We see a lot of firms do this. We work in tandem with X, Y, and Z. And if you're looking for that growth, we can look at that. And we have the right partners to partner up with that. So
I like what you just said about working with a lot of other firms. We have experience. And that can come in on the onboarding process too, where you give a tip. You want them to do it a certain way, and you're trying to figure out how to get them to do it that certain way. You can say, we have another firm that tried this and it worked really well for them. Or this idea really didn't, because, and this is why we're asking for it to be this way. That really sets you up to be the expert during the onboarding process and set the tone, if you will.
The client says that to you. I mean, we've had that. Well, they'll look at Linda and I and go, well, you know this, right? Like, yeah, we actually do. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
You want the onboarding to be very smooth. It's going to be, you have to remember, it's going to take time, and you have to let the client know that expectation is going to be time consuming. We are going to probably be working with one of your employees. It's going to take time. It's a building process, especially if you're changing software or moving into a different software. And I think sometimes you have to let them know that because of this, I mean, it's costly to the client, right? So the switch is costly to the clients, just like changing and adding a new employee. We have to learn the workflows and the processes, and we have to come up, our job is to come up with something that makes it really smooth, more efficient, more accuracy. We give them more because that's what they're buying from us than they ever had before. And I can tell you that lots of clients never had a 3-way bank reconciliation, at least a proper one. And they get that from us. And then they find out, well, you can do this, you can do that. There's more things that we can add. Like Sarah said, we don't change we're not going to reinvent the wheel here. We're going to do this in over time. So maybe they got a really crappy payroll program and we're like,
Yeah.
I want to change that, but I want to wait till the end of the year and we'll change it at the end of the year. We'll start to have that conversation in November so that we
Plant
can
those seeds.
kind of make it. Yeah, because otherwise, if you change too much on people, people don't like change. So because you're changing accounting teams and all of that, you just want to make it as smooth as possible. I think all three of us have been doing this enough that we do a very good job at it. But if you're listening and you want to figure out how to do this, because it's just remember, put yourself in that person's place that you're onboarding. I think that's the best way. And how would they feel if you were asking them constantly all week for things, or would they feel better if you did a 15-minute meeting with them direct on Zoom and just did it then? Instead of it's very naggy and you're interrupting their day a lot. You don't want to do that. You want to make this smooth. They'll be happier. You'll be happier.
It has some accountability to it too, right, Linda? It allows them to have time to get homework done and say, hey, we need it. We're actually delayed now. But without it being a penalty or a punishment feeling, an adversarial call kind of thing.
Keep it transparent, keep it documented, well documented, because people have short memories. Why isn't this done? You said it would be done by June 30th. Well, we're missing this, and this. And we've been asking for it every week. You're not going to get that. Why is it done if they're the person that's holding it up? So if you document it well, as a legal bookkeeper, you want to document it well too.
I think today's episode will really resonate with especially new accounting and bookkeeping people. If you're listening or watching this today, take lots of notes because this will really help you out.
Yeah, there's a lot of good tips and nuggets throughout this entire episode that will help you.
Yeah.
Frame it for you. Make it, I will say this, don't try to be us.
No.
It's got to be your style. Yeah, it's got to be your style. And I feel like that's a big difference here is, as you're stepping into this or growing it, make it about how it works for you and then what's repeatable for you. Because what I do and what Linda does, sometimes we do totally different ways of something. We get to the same end result, but we just have a different style. That's okay. We're fine with that. That's how that works.
I think the word is customize. Customize that onboarding and tell the client that that's what you're doing. I am customizing this onboarding just for you.
Yeah.
And if you're unsure, you could do like a survey as you're going along to certain clients, see how they like the onboarding. Maybe they might have an idea that might help you. Give them, how did you like the onboarding process? Did you feel it was timely? And then can you give us a few notes? So don't make it long, make it like 3 questions, but then you're going to get some feedback that might help you in the long run.
Sometimes though, don't you feel like everyone sends me that? Card. I'm so done.
I know I don't want the report card either, but it might help you, especially if
but it's even like just having to answer it. So I'm like,
I know everybody surveys us to death, right?
I know.
I did a survey from my grocery store. It's like, oh God, I don't want to. And it always says it's short, but it never is. Some
they never are
long. It's like,
your credit card, your bank, your telephone company,
airline, hotel.
Provider.
Well, you know what you could do, especially if you're new to this industry, is you jump on a Zoom with a friend, not a friend that's going to make a lot of fun of the process, but a friend who really cares about you, and onboard them. Do a practice onboarding. You're going to learn. You get to see what you look like.
Especially if you're a learning person.
I said, okay, Steve, you just signed yourself up.
You want to be a guinea pig, Steve, for us?
Sure. Why don't you guys onboard me after we're done here today?
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, share, and leave a review to help more listeners find the show. And be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your favorite podcasts so you never miss a beat. Have questions or a topic you'd like us to tackle? We're all ears. Drop us a line at info@accountantslawpod.com or send us a message through our website at accountantslawpod.com. And don't go it alone. Join our weekly Accountants Law Lab mastermind sessions at accountantslawlab.com and connect with a community of accounting professionals just like you.
You know what I was thinking about when she was saying that? I want one of those orchestra ones and just be like, click here.
I love it.
It's a great topic, though.
It was.
Good conversation.
Thank you.
We'll see you all next
everybody.
time. Bye.